1, announced at the opening of the session on Monday, the 19th of January. I have received no request for a vote in Parliament by members or political groups reaching at least the medium threshold. The committees may therefore start negotiations. The next item on the agenda is the joint debate concerning the European Council meeting. First, we have European Council and Commission statements, conclusions of the European Council meeting of the 18th of December 2025, and European Council and Commission statements, a stronger and more sovereign Europe amid rising geopolitical tensions and continuous threat to the rules-based order. We will start with the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, to take the floor. Antonio, go ahead.
Madam President Metsola, Madam President von der Leyen, honourable members, me gustaría empezar por expresar mis más sinceras condolencias por las víctimas de los accidentes ferroviarios ocurridos en los últimos días en España. Todo mi apoyo para sus familiares y seres queridos. The debate we are having today in this House could not be more timely. Let's face it, taken together, the geopolitical challenges Europe is facing sometimes seems daunting. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, the international rules-based order being undermined, core alliances being questioned. But the European Union will come out of this stronger, more resilient and more sovereign. For this to happen, our response must have three components: a Europe of principles, a Europe of protection, and a Europe of prosperity. All these three dimensions are being tested in the current moment of transatlantic relations. That is the reason why I decided to convene a meeting of the European leaders for tomorrow about transatlantic relations. Having listened to Member States in the run-up to this meeting, I believe a few fundamental elements are broadly shared. First, we are united around the principles of international law, territorial integrity and national sovereignty. Second, we are united in full support and solidarity with the Kingdom of Denmark and with Greenland. Only they, Denmark and Greenland, can decide on their future. Third, we recognise that there is a shared transatlantic interest in peace and security in the Arctic, notably working through NATO. Fourth, further tariffs would undermine transatlantic relations and are incompatible with the EU-US agreement. Fifth, we stand ready to defend ourselves, our member states, our citizens, our companies against any form of coercion. And the European Union has the power and the tools to do so. Sixth, we want to continue engaging constructively with the United States, of course, on all issues of common interest, and there are many, since we are partners and allies and share a transatlantic community. I believe these are the principles that should guide the discussions between our leaders tomorrow and our actions going forward. Ladies and gentlemen, the first way to Europe to become stronger and more sovereign is to remain a firm champion of the international rules-based order, international law and multilateralism. We will always uphold the principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter and defend human dignity and individual freedoms. We cannot accept that the law of the strongest prevails over the rights of the weakest, because international rules are not optional. An alliance cannot just boil down to a sequence of transactions. We cannot accept violations of international law anywhere, whether in Ukraine, Greenland, Latin America, Africa or in Gaza. We cannot accept violations of human rights, whether in Iran, in Sudan or in Afghanistan. In times like these, principles matter more than ever, because reliability is strength and consistency are key. The second way for Europe to become stronger and more sovereign is by better protecting our citizens. In 2025, we focused on the priority of Europe of defence and of accelerating our work towards European defence readiness. We have built the main building blocks. We are now working tirelessly to deliver, to invest better, coordinate more, improve efficiency, strengthen our European defence industry and deploy new financial instruments. But long-term security in Europe cannot be upheld through increased investment and cooperation in defence alone. It must be achieved through a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, because Ukraine's security is Europe's security. Our response has been clear since the first day of Russia's war of aggression: to provide full support to Ukraine, financially, in terms of security, for reconstruction and on its path to the European Union membership. At the last December European Council, recalling the commitment made in October to address Ukraine's urgent financial needs for 2026-2027, leaders took two historic decisions. First, we approved a 90 billion common European loan, backed by the European Union budget, to cover Ukraine's financial needs over the next 2 years. Second, Ukraine will begin repaying this loan only once Russia pays reparations, and until that time, the Union reserves the right to make use of immobilized Russian assets to ensure repayment. So, on Ukraine, we committed and we delivered, because in times of crisis, the European Union steps up, assumes its responsibilities and acts decisively. Ladies and gentlemen, the third way for Europe to become stronger and more sovereign is to prosper economically. Just as leaders provided strong momentum to the Europe of defence in 2025, we must do the same for Europe's economy this year, 2026, working hand in hand with the Commission and the European Parliament to give a new impetus to Europe's economic growth, innovation and resilience. We must deliver for our citizens on quality jobs, wages and housing affordability, because social cohesion and prosperity are two sides of the same coin. On their own, neither would be sustainable. That is why, on the 12th of February, I will convene a strategic brainstorming session of European leaders to discuss how best to harness the full potential of Europe's single market in the new geoeconomic context. The European Union is a powerful single market. We need to deepen it, to complete it. How? By making it easier to bring businesses, services and investments across borders, by reducing red tape at all levels while maintaining our policy ambitions, by combining affordable, secure and sustainable energy sources in a truly integrated European energy market, by strengthening our digital sovereignty, defending our standards and regulatory independence against tech oligarchs, while protecting our children from deregulated and unconstrained social media, by promoting a savings and investment union that channels savings into productive investments within the European Union, and through trade. Trade deals are global rule books. Tariffs are taxes on citizens and companies. The European Union has built the most extensive network of trade agreements covering 78 countries, and the Commission is making impressive progress in negotiation with countries like India, Australia, Thailand, Philippines and the United Arab Emirates, to name just few. Just last week, we signed the historic Mercosur Treaty, which will create the largest free trade zone in the world, a market of more than 700 million consumers in 31 countries. Its political and economic significance cannot be overstated, especially in the current context. This agreement has not only economic value, is a decisive geopolitical significance right this moment. This agreement sends a powerful message to the world. Instead of tariffs, the European Union offers partnerships. Instead of spheres of influence, we are creating spheres of shared prosperity. The signing of the Mercosur Agreement followed more than 2 decades of negotiations. During this time, all points of view, including those voiced in this House, were carefully listened to and acted upon. For example, last month, significant additional measures and safeguards were put in place. I now look forward to working with you on the next steps, for which the role of the Parliament is essential. Honourable members, my message today is clear. Only by combining principles, protection and prosperity can we make Europe more sovereign, more resilient and stronger. Together with the European Parliament and the European Commission, we will keep delivering for our citizens, for our collective strength and for Europe's place in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Costa. And now the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen.
Thank you very much, Madam President, dear Roberta, Mr. President, dear Antonio, honourable members. Let me start by conveying my deepest condolences to the families and friends of the train accident in Spain. Our thoughts are with them. Honourable members, since I stood last time here in this plenary, we have witnessed events that have shaken the world. From the nationwide protests and repression across Iran, to the seizing of shadow fleet tankers in the North Atlantic, from the volatile situation around the Arctic and Greenland, to the relentless bombing against Ukrainian civilians and infrastructure, from the tensions in the Middle East to the Indo-Pacific. All of this reflects a number of realities for Europe. The first is a confirmation that the shift in the international order is not only seismic, but it is permanent. And the sheer speed of change far outstrips anything we have seen in decades. We now live in a world defined by raw power, whether economic or military, technological or geopolitical. And while many of us may not like it, we must deal with the world as it is now. Which brings me to the second reality and imperative for Europe. and that is to speed up our push for independence. Whether in our economy or in our security, whether on technology or democracy, we have to be strong in shaping ourselves if we don't want to shape the world around us. In this increasingly lawless world, Europe needs its own levers of power, and we know them: a strong economy, a thriving single market, one that can do business in different markets and can compete all around the world, a strong innovation and technology capacity, united societies with high levels of education, talent and health systems, and above all, a real capacity to defend ourselves. This is what European independence is all about. It is not about anyone else. It is not driven by the recent event. It is about a need and an opportunity for us to build a stronger union. We are already moving in this direction, but the speed of change requires a new approach from Europe. We will need a departure from Europe's traditional caution, just like we did on energy, on recovering from the pandemic with Next Generation EU, or like we are doing now with defence, with SAFE, or on supporting Ukraine. The world is changing faster, so does our mindset. So our institutions, governments and society, all of us, must transform the ways in which we think and act. And allow me to touch on a number of points which I believe will be critical. It starts with security, and in particular the situation in the Arctic. Greenland is not just a territory in a key region of the world map and a land rich in critical raw materials, a strategic outpost on emerging global sea routes. It's all of these things. But above all, Greenland is home to a free and sovereign people. It is a nation with its sovereignty and its right to territorial integrity, and the future of Greenland is only for the Greenlanders to decide. Honourable members, we do agree with our American friends on the need to ensure the security of the Arctic region. And on this we are not only aligned, but we are working together, notably in the context of NATO. Finland, for example, is working with the United States on icebreakers, a key piece of equipment in the context of operations in the High North. Or take the recent Danish-led Arctic Light exercise a few months ago in the context of NATO. This was key to strengthening Allied readiness in the Arctic. So we are aligned, we are working together, we share the same strategic assessment on Arctic security, and this is why the threat of additional tariffs for security reasons is simply wrong. If we are now plunging into a dangerous downward spiral between allies, this would only embolden the very adversaries we are both so committed to keeping out of the strategic landscape. Later this week, leaders will meet to discuss our response at the European Council. We are at a crossroads. Europe prefers dialogue and solutions, but we are fully prepared to act, if necessary, with unity, urgency and determination. But beyond this, we need our own strategic approach. This is why we're working on a package to support Arctic security. The first pillar will be a massive European investment surge in Greenland, in particular to further support the local economy and infrastructure. This will build on what we have already done 2 years ago, before this all happened, I was in Nuuk to open our first office there. And in the next European budget, we have already proposed to double our financial support to Greenland, but of course we must do more and do it faster. Second point, we will work with the United States and all partners on wider Arctic security. In particular, I believe we should use our defence spending surge on Arctic-ready equipment and strengthen our security arrangement with partners such as the UK, Canada, Norway, Iceland and others. Finally, I believe Europe itself needs to reassess its wider security strategy. This should look at what is needed to adjust to today's new realities. Many of you have worked on various national and European security strategies, some of them in the recent past, but the world has changed so fast and Europe now has to change with it. Honourable members, when it comes to security, it is more important than ever that we keep focusing on Ukraine, because our European security and our European independence hinges on what happens next. It is now almost 4 years since Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine. Peace talks are now ongoing, and we are recognising the efforts the US is doing in this region. But while these efforts intensify, so does Russia's attacks. So Europe will continue to support Ukraine in every way, and this is why it was so important that in the last European Council we agreed to jointly raise 90 billion euros for Ukraine. Europe has taken clear responsibility for Ukraine's need, both civilian and military, and this 90 billion euros shows our unfaltering commitment and solidarity, and we will stand with Ukraine until there is a just and lasting peace. Honourable members, allow me to briefly turn to our economy and our need to reduce our dependencies here too, because this is intrinsically linked. Trade inside our single market accounts for 55% of our GDP. Trade with the rest of the world is worth roughly 45% of our GDP, 45%. Our supply chains and de-risking goals depend on trade. So trade matters more than ever. I just came back from Paraguay, where we signed a historic deal with Mercosur. Next week, we will be in India for another groundbreaking agreement. And negotiations are advancing with many others who want to do business with us. These deals will open massive opportunities for our businesses. They will create jobs here in Europe. They will give us resilience and security of supply, because the more trading partners we have worldwide, the more independent we are. And that is exactly what we need. If we take Mercosur, which I know is hotly debated in this House, the deal secures our access to raw materials our industry needs. And the benefits for European companies will be huge. Just take the automotive sector. European exports to Mercosur can rise by 20 billion euros or 200%. Or look at the chemicals or machineries, same effects. The deal with Mercosur will deliver huge gains also for producers of dairy, wine, spirits, oil, and much more. At the same time, we have listened carefully to your concerns and to our farmers, and we have secured strong safeguards for our sensitive agri-food sectors. I believe this is a deal that will bring benefits across our economy and across every member state. So to conclude, honourable members, this moment of global change is fraught with dangers, and Europe must be ready to change even faster, to become more independent for its own future. This will not be easy. It will require difficult decisions, and it will require to frame all of our work in the bigger picture. But I'm deeply convinced that together we can achieve it. Thank you very much, and long live Europe.
Thank you very much, President von der Leyen. And now we will have the first round of political group speakers, starting with the President of the EPP Group, Manfred Weber.
Madam President of the European Parliament, Commission, Council President, dear colleagues, beginning of 26, and people observing what is going on in politics on geopolitical level, when they listen to media, a lot of Europeans are concerned, or probably even scared.